Hello everyone, it's Nostalgic, coming back to you with another episode in our sorted series of different kind of tutorial-esque videos that are aimed for new players in Path of Exile. Now, up to this video, most of the sorted series has revolved around either things that were very, very basic for new players to understand, or they have been kind of like map exposés, I guess you would call them, where I would just run a map to let you kind of see, you know, what to expect when you run the map and what kind of layout it has, and also what to expect from the boss. This video is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be aimed more towards newer players who have progressed into the game to the point to where they are doing maps and they want to grow their currency a little bit. Now, something that is very, very useful for new players is to complete the Chaos recipe and the Regal recipe. This is a way for you to kind of recompense some of your losses or expenses in mapping. Now, if you're not familiar with what those are, basically both of those are recipes that you can sell items to the vendor, and you will get in return either a Chaos orb or a Regal orb. Now, how do you do this? Well, Chaos recipe is for item level 60 to 74. So how do you know what item level an item is? Well, if you just hover your mouse over the item and hold down Alt, it will show you. You can see it right underneath Energy Shield. It says item level 73. Now, if you sell a full set of between item level 60 to 74 items to any vendor in the game, doesn't have to be a specific one, that vendor will return to you a Chaos orb. A full set is defined as a chest, a pair of boots, a belt, one necklace, 2 rings, and some form of weapons. Either it can be 2 one-handed weapons, it can be a one-hand and a shield, or it can be a 2-handed weapon. Also, you will be required to include a pair of gloves and a helmet. And when you do that, in return, you will receive a Chaos Orb. Now, if the item in the set, if the whole set is 75 or above, you do the same thing, a full set, and you will receive a Regal. Now, when you're collecting items, when you're mapping for Chaos and Regal recipe, you know, say you get a lot of items, and most of them are junk, and you know, that's just kind of the way that it works when you map. 95% of the stuff you find is going to be junk, and you're not going to be able to sell it in your shop or in the trade chat. You're going to be collecting all these things, and what you're going to find is that some slots are much, much easier to collect than other slots. Specifically, your roadblocks on putting these things together are normally going to be jewelry and belts. Rings, in particular, are a bit hard to come by. So a way that you can kind of offset that a little bit is by collecting rings that you find with good implicit rolls. So that's what I do, is as I'm bebopping along in the game and killing things, I have my loot filter set up to where it will highlight items that I can use for the Chaos recipe or the Regal recipe. And depending on what kind of item it is, I have a few different things that I look for. But generally, you want to look for items with a very high implicit roll, if not maximum implicit roll. And basically what that does is it gives you the absolute most chance that you can when you spend an alchemy orb on that item that it's going to turn out good. Now, different items do have different implicit bands for their affixes. Some of them, the band is very narrow, say like an onyx amulet. It's got a pretty narrow range of implicit affixes that it can roll on it. Now all of these in my bag are plus 16 because I made use of the onyx amulet recipe, in which you can take any amulet, regardless of what it is, regardless of what kind of attributes it has on it. You can sell it to a vendor with one gem of each color, and you just swap in and out the gems until it gives you the implicit that you want. Now, onyx amulets, as I said, have a really narrow band of this implicit that it can roll. It can only roll between 10 to 16. You can compare that with something like a sapphire ring, which can actually go anywhere between 20% to 30%. So that's a pretty wide range of variance there. Now, so what you're going to want to do is, once you have a good amount of alchemies, you don't want to burn all of your alchemies on this, because of course you're also going to need alchemy orbs for other things, such as rolling maps, putting rarity onto maps. But if you have a good amount saved up, which I happen to have at this point, and you're kind of like your other parts of your Regal or your even Chaos stash tab are overflowing, and you have saved up some jewelry, it might be a good time to go ahead and drop some alks into it. Now, I do want to give you one tip, word of warning. Typically, it's not worth alching jewelry for your Chaos recipe until it's item level 72 plus. And the reason for this is because of the way that the tiers on the affixes roll. At level 72, that is a breakpoint for resists. So at level 72, you can roll a higher tier of resist on that ring or that necklace that you wouldn't have been able to roll on a 71 or under. So typically, when I'm collecting jewelry for, say, the Chaos recipe, I will not bother with anything that's under item level 72. Now, you'll also find some people who do not advise alching anything under item level 75. And that basically is just because the return to them just does not justify spending the alchemy orb. So you'll have to kind of figure that out for yourself as to what your threshold is, what your tolerance is for profit. Now, the idea being here, you alch these things, and they're not, hopefully they're not all going to go into those recipes. As I've mentioned in other videos that I've done, Path of Exile is a game about kind of like doggy paddle, treading water. The idea being, you just want to keep your head above water until you hit it big. And that's kind of what you hope for. I might alch everything in here and get everything is just poop, but then on the very last one I could hit something that sells for an exalt, and I've made all of my money back, right, in just one alch. So that's the idea behind this. Now, so what we're going to do, we're just going to drop some alks onto these, and as I alch them, we're going to come back through and we're going to take a look at each item, and I'll tell you, we'll kind of discuss the item and how it rolled, and we'll kind of talk about, is it worth price checking, is it not, and if it is, we're going to put it in the Regal or the Chaos tabs. And then, for the things that we do think that are worth price checking, I'm actually going to show you how I price check things on PoE.trade. So, let's get started. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and drop alks onto all of these just for starters, because I know I'm going to alch them all anyways. So there. Okay, and we probably spent, well, there was 25 alks, 30, 35. We spent 37 alchemies, which alchemy orbs you can normally buy for 2 to 1. So that's about, what? 18.5 chaos investment in this. So if we get anything, you know, we're gonna get the Regal recipe back out of this. All of this is stuff that is for Regal. So you got to think, you know, even if we only find something that's worth, say, 10 chaos, we've probably broken even. And there's a pretty good chance that at least one item in here will be something that I can sell for that amount. Alright, so let's go ahead and maneuver over to this tab. And things that are just junk, I'm just going to go ahead and throw in there. And what I'll do with the stuff that's not junk is we can put it in over here to the right, and if we run out of room, we can take it into my price me tab. Alright, so this first ring, Eagle Knot 2-stone ring. It only rolled 4 affixes on it, and it did not roll anything that is very good. The evasion roll is very middling. The mana roll is decent. The cold resistance roll is pretty low. Life gain on kill is actually pretty high, but life gain on kill is not something that people typically go out of their way to search for. So this is going to go into the recipe tab. Our next ring is Storm Whirl, 2-stone ring. Has some life regen on it. Again, it's kind of like life on kill. People don't really that's not something that people really value. It's more like cream on top. 50 mana, okay. Mana regen rate's kind of middling too. The energy shield is decent, and again with the life gain on kill, so this is junk. Brimstone Coil adds a decent amount of fire damage to attack, adds a decent amount of lightning damage to attack, so that's okay. Middling amount of mana, and it also has 2 resists on it, and it does have 1 open affix slot. I believe, see, I know that the added damage, both of those are prefixes, and I believe that the mana is a prefix as well, which means that we could add another resist to this ring. Now, if you do the math on it and you look at how much resist it has already, it's sitting at about, well, 21 plus 20 is 41, and 41 plus 32 is 73. So it's sitting at 73 resist currently. Really kind of the line of demarcation for rings in terms of resists. If you're looking at a ring that the resist is really what's going to drive the value, you need to be looking for around 100. So if we added another resist on this ring, we would be looking at a ring that had right around 100 resist. The main knock on this ring is going to be it doesn't have any life. It doesn't have any crit. So, do I think this ring is sellable for more than what I'm going to get out of the Regal recipe? Possibly. So we'll set this one to the side and investigate a little bit more. The next ring, Behemoth Gyre. It's got some low stat rolls on it. Kind of middle-ish evasion, decent mana, and a little bit of energy shield. So, you guessed it, it's good. Rage Whirl. Low intelligence, low accuracy, does have some life, a little bit of energy shield, and increased light radius. Agony Coil. Okay dexterity. Low accuracy, very laughable evasion rating, very low life, does have a decent mana regeneration rate, and again, light radius. It's poop. Torment Nail has a good fire damage roll on it, decent accuracy roll, very good mana regeneration roll, and 35% cold resistance, which isn't quite T1, but it's not a bad roll. And it does have 2 open slots on it. So chances are we could probably put another resistance on this, or we might even be able to put life on it. Currently it's sitting at about, what is that, 35 plus 32, so 67 resist. With the mana regen being pretty good and adding fire damage with accuracy, this is something that we might be able to make a pittance off of. It's not going to be anything that's going to bring home bank, but it could be enough to sort of offset our costs. Okay, Havoc Grip, 2-stone ring. As you're looking at this ring, you probably already know without me speaking, it's not very good. The int roll is low and the evasion is low as well. It just doesn't have enough. Okay, this was a prismatic ring, which has plus 10% to all elemental resistances. You can make these by combining the 3 different types of 2-stone rings. And these also, like Onyx Amulets, have a pretty small amount of variance in that implicit. It can only be between 6% to 10%. So to start off with on this ring, it has a very low added physical damage to attacks. Some life regen per second, that's okay. Low mana, good mana regen, and some decent life gained on kill. The problem with this ring is, well, there's no life, and the physical damage roll is just simply too low. Morbid Eye. Yeah, you know, it just doesn't have much on it. The mana roll is okay, and the accuracy is decent, but everything else is just not. So far we're not doing too well, but remember, it just takes one. Gloom Grip. Plus 16 dexterity, that's a little low. 11% increased cold damage is not bad. It's kind of middle of the road, and it adds some lightning damage to attacks. So that's okay. The evasion rating is actually pretty good, and it does have a very good fire resist roll on it. It has 1 open fix as well. So, this could be one that we might want to look at. It's probably not going to do too well for us, but you know, you could be surprised sometimes. Our next ring, the Miracle Twirl, has a better physical damage roll on it, 6 to 11, not too bad. The dexterity roll is better than average, and it does have a little bit of energy shield on it, as well as a very high cold resistance roll. So this ring is not too shabby. You're looking at right at 75 total resist with some decent physical damage, a little bit of energy shield on top. And for somebody who might need dex in their build, this ring could, you know, help them out. What would we probably put on this if we were, you know, crafting it for ourselves? We'd probably look at putting life on this ring, or maybe current. It just depends on what you know. It just depends on what open affixes there are. Hypnotic Grasp. Well, the first thing that jumps out at me is that this one is full on affixes, so that could be good. It has a good evasion roll on it. Some mana, some energy shield, not too bad, and it is also tri-res, fire, cold, and lightning. Unfortunately, the fire and the cold rolled absolutely dog shit. I have somebody trying to buy something. I'm going to sell this just real quick. 6 fuse. Alright, so sorry about the interruption. Let's get back to what we're doing. So as I was saying, the fire and the cold are just really low. You know, it's a shame that they weren't as maybe even just to the level of a lightning, which isn't even really that high. Because if they were, we would be looking at a ring that was sitting at about 120% cold resistance. Even if it was at 120, sorry, not cold resistance, but just overall resistance. But the thing is, even if it was at 120% resistance, you know, this ring still might be kind of a niche sell for us because it would be just purely defensive. People tend to really like to get some offense on their rings. Rapture Band, 2-stone ring, low strength roll, okay. Add some cold damage. The accuracy's okay, the mana's okay, and it does have some cold resistance to it. You know, this ring probably isn't going to be something that we're going to find that can be sold. But, you know, maybe we should take a look at it. I probably don't. I don't think so. I just don't see it happening. It just lacks too much. Miracle Turn. You know, the very first affix basically seals the deal. The physical damage is just too low. Skull Circle. This is a critical strike ring with a max implicit. It has a very, very good physical damage on it, which is awesome to pair with the critical strike. And it adds some cold damage too, and the accuracy roll is pretty smoking. Unfortunately, the fire resist is kind of low. But there is still a chance that we could get something out of this ring because it has a very nice implicit and the physical damage is almost max. Entropy Spiral. You know, 4 affixes, none of them are really just stand out, so they poop. Alright, so now we're into some amulets, and after that we're going to progress on to some belts. It looks like I'm kind of running out of room over here. I might have to do a little bit of an overflow here, so I'm just going to drop these maybe back here into this tab. Okay, so all of these are Onyx amulets, and the reason for that is, generally speaking, most people are looking for stats on their neck. So, what better way to get a little bit of everything than with an Onyx amulet? Now, if you do the math on it, you have 3 different kinds of necks. You have the single stat necks, you have the 2 stat necks, and then you have the Onyx amulet. The single stat necks can only go up to 30. The 2 stat necks, I believe the max is 48, 24 of both. 16 times 3 is 48. So, with the 2, you know, the 2 stat necks and the Onyx amulet, you're getting more attributes out of it total than you are with the single. You're sacrificing that variety to get that focus. So you're sacrificing some attributes. I really think that the Onyx amulets and the 2 stat amulets are better for alchemy because you're not cutting off so much of your market by focusing, say, with a strength amulet or an intelligence amulet. Alright, so this amulet, it also rolled another plus all to attributes. So this amulet has plus 24 to all attributes, and on top of that it has another 33 to intelligence. So you're looking at an amulet here that has 57 intelligence on it. It does have a decent mana regen roll on it, and a little bit of fire damage. Unfortunately, even with all of those stats on it and the mana regen, it's just not going to be enough to make this thing sellable. This one has a 6% increased fire damage, 19% increased armor, and 17% increased evasion rating. That's a little bit interesting. What you'd rather see here is you'd rather see just one of those and have it be something more useful. You know, most builds either focus armor or focus evasion. So maybe for a build that turns the evasion into armor, this might be pretty decent because it's almost like a double dip. Unfortunately, with the cold resistance being so low and the fire damage percent being so low, this one is also okay. This one kind of did the same thing. Instead of armor at 19%, now we have evasion at 19%, and we also have 11% increased maximum energy shield, along with some life. And keep in mind also that the plus 23 to strength gives additional life, so this actually has close to 80 life. It's a purely defensive amulet. Do I think this would actually sell? Likely not. Victory Choker. So this one has some elemental damage with weapons, which is pretty hot this league. Very low accuracy, some armor percent, some mana, and some life regen. You know, if that increased elemental damage from weapons was higher and the accuracy was higher, maybe we could do something with this, but simply not. Sorrow Beads. Physical damage roll is kind of meh. Does have 2 very good resistance rolls on it, and some attack damage leeches mana, which isn't a bad thing to throw on there too. This one actually might sell. Probably not for much, but it could sell for something. I'm not sure about the leech, whether that's a prefix or a suffix. If that's a prefix, we could suffix on cold resist, and this would be an amulet with about 110 resist on it, plus 60 all attributes. Might work. This one, very low on physical damage, has some critical strike multiplier, but nothing else on it. Plus 31 to dex, 12% evasion, 24% lightning resist, 14% increased cold damage, that's not bad. 31 to maximum mana, 22 to maximum energy shield, okay. 7% lightning resist, it's low. But the physical attack damage leeches life is pretty bitchin'. Downside to that being that it's physical attack damage, not any kind of attack damage. So, you know, I'm thinking in my head, what are some physical attack builds that I know that use cold damage, and the one that jumps out in my mind is Ice Crash. But I just don't know that there's enough on here to support the cold damage and the physical attack damage. This one is very bad. We're just going to skip right over it. It's so bad. This one, interesting, it rolled an all resist. That's the maximum roll that all resist can hit on, 16%. The mana roll is decent, but the other rolls are not very good. This one has an kind of below average physical damage roll. The int, the accuracy are bad, the mana's bad, and multiplier's okay, but that's it, so not enough. This one is interesting. This one is very interesting. We'll come back to it in just a second. Chimeric Visage. 1C. Is it in my 2 fuse? Might be in here. Yeah, I could see somebody wanting that. I really hope he doesn't pay me in Chaos. I don't like dealing in Chaos anymore. Chaos are inflated. I like it for fuse, but if that's all he's going to give me, then okay. Alright. Now, I saw something on the one that we were looking at that jumped out at me immediately. Let's get back to it. What jumped out immediately at me with this was the spell damage cast speed combo deal right there. 13% increased spell damage, 6% increased cast speed. Those go together like peas and carrots. 44 to maximum life is not the best, but it's decent, and some energy shield on it as well. You know, it's a real shame that that plus to all elemental resistances pooped out. You know, if that would have rolled, say, like the other one did at 16 or even 15, that would have greatly helped the prospects of this amulet. As it is, we're still going to check it out, because I think it'll be fun to look at. So, out of all of those amulets, there are 2 that we might be able to get something out of. All the rest of them were... Alright, so let's look at these belts. Now, when it comes to belts, I typically go for 2 different kinds of belts. I normally look for leather belts with high plus to life rolls, and rustic sashes with high IPD rolls. You could also argue that chain belts too, but typically most builds want life or they want that physical damage. So those, just to kind of minimize the amount of people that I'm excluding, I tend to just pick up those belts. And normally when I pick them up, what I'm looking for on a rustic sash, I'm looking for an IPD of 21 or above. It can only go up, I think, to 24. And I just got disconnected. Damn. Well, we'll wait for the internet to come back up. And go back to it. Okay. I really need to get that fixed, but I don't quite know what's wrong with it. Okay. And then with leather belts, I typically look for anything that has the implicit of 35 or greater. As you start to garner more currency, you can start to kind of narrow down what you actually pick up. So in actuality, I only burn alks on things that are probably like 38, 39, and 40. Okay, so let's look at this one. It's got some increased elemental damage with weapons, which is not bad. Maximum energy shield, life regen, and a single resist. This will probably not sell. Our next leather belt has some strength on it. Has the wonderful reduced enemy stun threshold affix, which is absolutely terrible. Has a low plus to armor roll. It does have a decent chaos resistance roll on it, and also the lovely increased flask mana recovery rate. Brick. Another leather belt. Has strength and an additional life roll, but the life roll is low. Some energy shield and a low resist roll, so again, very bad. Some strength. Now this is an armor roll that we can get behind. I believe the maximum is 400, so that's pretty good. Has a low energy shield roll and a low chaos resistance roll. So despite the fact that the armor roll is very lucrative, the rest of it is not very good. And on this rustic sash, we have another low armor roll. We do have 2 resists, but they're both pretty low, and then an increased stun duration on enemies. Now I know there are a few builds floating around that do specialize in stun, but really this probably isn't going to net us anything. Some strength, good strength roll actually, plus 9 to armor, decent life roll. When you add that in with the life from strength, you're actually looking at close to 90 strength. Some life regen, a bleh amount of energy shield, and some stun recovery means trashola. This leather belt has another good strength roll, middle of the road life roll. Maximum energy shield is not very good, and the increased stun duration, nope. So our last one here, very good life rolls on this belt, but that is it. So we ripped basically on all of the belts. So now, okay, we've alked everything. So the next thing that we need to do is we actually need to slide on over to PoE.trade and see kind of what some comparable things are selling for, and establish whether any of these other items that we have are worth investing our time into, or should we just wash our hands of them and move them into the corresponding Regal tabs. So I'm going to put a cut in right here, and I will release the second part of this video probably maybe a day after this one. So if you want to see, you know, kind of like how I do my price checking with PoE.trade, if you're unfamiliar with PoE.trade, it might be a good video for you to check out. If not, then thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Game on.